Thank you for joining us for episode 2 of Rhino's Horn, the podcast where we interview Canadian comedians and politicians. My guest this week is comedian Ali Hassan. You may know Ali from his work with CBC Radio or his many festival appearances from around the world. I enjoy talking to Ali very much. I've learned a lot about stand-up from him over the years. We have great conversations. This one is no exception. We talk about what it was like to live in the United States for September 11th, how maybe Ellen DeGeneres should not be hanging out with George Bush, and what a complete and utter badass Congresswoman Ilhan Omar is. Thank you for listening, and please enjoy. So how you been doing? The family's good?
Family's good. You know, my son, one of my boys was in soccer 4 days a week. So that's been a real, just completely, and soccer was an interesting thing. Because soccer was almost like a microcosm for the pandemic,
right?
Because we every day in soccer, because he played 4 days a week. You know, usually the father's like, "Yo, what's up?" You know, come in for a hug. Then some were shaking. Then 2 days later they're shaking hands from afar. 2 days later it's fist bumps. A week later it's the elbow bump, and then Soccer Ontario Federation has canceled soccer. You know what I mean?
Wow.
You just watched it get progressively closer to socially distancing and then completely done.
And then done. That's wild.
Yeah. So he doesn't have that. My daughter doesn't have her guitar. But so, I feel bad for them, but they seem to be managing. They seem to be okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. They're not half as bummed as I am.
Right. Yeah. You mentioned school. They have to still do school. Like, are the teacher now?
It's depending on the teacher. It's a little bit ad hoc and loosey-goosey.
Oh.
Or it's, because I have like age 16, 14, 8, and 5, right? So everybody's got different things that they're doing. The youngest guy, the teachers they're not worried. They're like, just make sure he knows the alphabet. He can write lowercase, uppercase. He knows his numbers, and that's it. And this guy already knows that. So we're just trying to do busy work for him.
Right.
Some days it's like, we just don't have hey, color in the parrot, just color it, like just bullshit.
Yeah.
And other days it's like, all right, I'm going to teach you some numbers in French, buddy. I'm going to teach you some words in French. I'm more motivated and I have the time. And other times Papa's going through his own mental health issues. And I'm like, God, do whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah, no, of course. I've been reading a lot of articles about how a lot of parents are like, you know what? It's enough. Like,
it is, especially if you're a working parent. My wife and I don't have any excuses. We could devote more time to them. Now, the 16 and 14-year-old, we shouldn't be. They should be independent enough, and they are.
Yeah.
But my 16-year-old tells me, she's like, certain teachers are trying to hold classes on Zoom, so they're doing their best. But all the kids mute their Zoom and cut their video. So the teacher is like asking questions. He's like, hello, is anybody there? Is anybody listening to me? My daughter is a real nerd, so he'll be like, Elisha. So then Elisha will take off her audio and go, I'm here, Monsieur Demo. And he'll be like, good, I knew you were here.
That's so funny.
So funny, man. But yeah, these other kids probably like log on and then go play video games. They don't give a shit.
No, for sure, yeah.
And I feel terrible for the teachers. I know a lot of like parents that I know are shitting on the teachers right now because they're like, they're not even correcting the work. But you think about these teachers and they know what's coming in September. Like as it is in September, trying to catch kids up so that everybody's on the same page, it's impossible.
Yeah.
Now it's going to be like, a whole new approach. Like some kids have been very, very diligent about trying to keep up, but nobody's really learning.
No.
So I'm trying to, like, my boys especially are really keen to help me in the kitchen. I'm trying to show them more about kitchen work, and we got to figure out some life skills to teach the girls. I don't have any life skills, right? Like a comedian, radio show host. It's only cooking. That's all I have. That's like a skill. I don't know how to even chop wood. So that's the problem. Like, I don't know what to really
I can teach you how to talk shit. If
Yeah. All right. Let's say somebody's about to punch you. Here are 5 funny things you can say.
You were living in the States before you even started comedy, I guess, right?
Yeah. I was an IT consultant, a very, very bad IT consultant.
And that was where, in Chicago?
Yep.
And so what years would that have been?
That was 2000 and 2001. So that was during the 9/11. I was in Chicago. In 2000, in June of 2000, I started. And then I had proven myself to be pretty useless. And so I was actually laid off the Friday before 9/11.
Oh, wow.
So 9/11, some people will remember, some people won't. It was a Tuesday.
Yeah.
And it's very funny. Every time I think of like, people, I don't know if you come in contact with this, but people are always like, send the email on Tuesday, right? Because people have, Mondays are busy and Fridays people have sort of checked out. Tuesday's a good day to send the email. Right. And I always think of like, is that what the 9/11 guys were thinking? That always goes in my head. They're like, don't do it on Monday. It's not, it's not a good time to connect with people. Tuesday's a better day. Like, why Tuesday?
Yeah, they won't forget it if we do it on Tuesday. Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know why I'm making light of that. It was the most horrible time of my life. But I'd been laid off. And so that's September 7th that I get laid off. 8th and 9th are the weekend. 10th is my birthday. So I'm born on September 10th. Oh, wow. So I hated my job so much. I partied like an animal that weekend. I really like reckless abandon, and I was like, this is great. This is amazing. It's like milestones. This job is gone. I'm turning a new age, whatever that age was. I was, entering into my 30s. Yeah. And, or maybe I was, I don't know. I have to do some math there, but it was, I was very happy in either case. Yeah. And then the goal was, Tuesday morning, I'm going to start applying for new jobs. And I was like, I don't want to be an IT consultant anymore. This work sucked. I got to get into sales. And because my IT degree cost so much money, I went to this, like, I got this diploma. Sure. I was like $22,000. I was like, I got to keep, I got to make it so that wasn't a complete waste of time. So IT sales.
Good on this investment. Yeah.
Exactly. And I was like, I'll be able to communicate with people. I'll be able to use my personality. I'm not going to be sitting in a fucking, what are those called? IT, like a farm, basically, a corporate farm in Deerfield, Illinois. I'll be moving. I'll be shaking. Yeah. And I sat down Tuesday morning at my cousin's place because my laptop had been taken back when I was laid off and I didn't have one of my own. So my cousin goes to work early and I have his place and I sit down on his laptop, TV's in the background, and I'm on all the Workopolis, Monster.com, I'm all these websites applying for jobs. And I'm like, what is happening on the what is this? What movie are they showing at 9 in the morning? This is so, and I keep looking and I'm on my laptop and I'm looking and all of a sudden I'm like, this is CNN. This is what my cousin had left it on. Yeah. What's happening here? And I don't know how much you know about Chicago, but my cousin lived along Lake Shore a little bit. Oh yeah. North. And so he was like a higher up on Lake Shore, but from his apartment, which is Marine Drive. Anyway, you can look down, you can look south, and you can see the Sears Tower. Right. And there was a point where there was a plane that was missing for a while. They had one went into the Pentagon, two went into the towers.
Pennsylvania?
Pennsylvania, right? But Pennsylvania, they were tracking it, and it looked like, as far as where they last knew where it was, it looked like it could come to Chicago. Sure. And once two planes fly into the building, the World Trade Center, you're like, well, anything is now possible. So that is as possible, if not more possible than what we just saw. Sure. So I was just like, there was about an hour where I was like, am I going to sit helplessly in my cousin's apartment and watch a plane fly into a building 5-6 miles down the road from me? Is this what's going to happen? Yeah. Insane day. And a lot of my friends worked in New York at the time. Yeah. And we didn't know, like my buddy Manny, it was like Manny at SolomonSmithBarney.com, right? But I don't know where Solomon Smith Barney offices are. I've never asked him, where are your offices?
Sure, where that is in relation to the towers. Yeah,
exactly. So we were like calling our buddies for hours. Phone lines are all down. Didn't know if our friends were alive or dead. And yeah, this is a very, 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 very crazy day.
Yeah, that's what I find interesting, because I went to high school in Indiana for a few years. My dad, also as an IT consultant, moved us to Indiana So we were there for about 4 years, but I was there also during September 11th. And I remember I was in high school, but it was pandemonium. Like we watched
Yeah.
it on the TVs the second plane hit live, and people were just running around screaming because they knew people, and it was just a really wild scene. And I don't know how much you know about Indiana, but it's a very racist, like the home of the KKK.
My cousin whose apartment I was in is from Indianapolis originally.
Oh,
The part of the guy who's in Chicago. He's half the reason I moved to Chicago, is I could be with my cousin. So
sure.
I grew up going to Indianapolis almost every year of my life when I was like in my teens. So I haven't seen much of Indiana for
Mhm.
the reasons you are alluding to,
Right.
but I've been quite a few times. Yeah. Where were you in Indiana?
That's interesting. We moved to Carmel, Indiana, which is just north of the city there.
I know of it. Yeah.
So I grew up in small town Ontario, so it was kind of a big culture shock to end up in the middle of a cornfield like that.
Although one might argue that there are many similarities between small town Ontario and small town Indiana or
Yeah,
rural America as well.
definitely. But I just and definitely like in my town there was some of that stuff. Like there was racism and stuff, but we definitely pushed back against it because we had
Right.
like with buddies. The only Muslim people in the town, the Moodleys, it was like a family, and we were friends with the family. And then the Sargents was like 3 black brothers, and they were the only black people pretty much in the town. But we were good friends with them, and so
Sure,
it
sure.
would be the racism coming in, and we'd be pushing. You know, people would fight in our town over that. And then I go to
Oh, nice.
Indiana, and they're throwing the N-word around like it's nothing. And the thing is, because I think they didn't know me, they just assumed that I would be one of them, and so I was hearing a lot of stuff that I'd never heard before. But then I would argue with them right up until September 11th, and then it felt like if you questioned anything,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
they'd throw you overboard.
Oh yeah, it was, and that was very, very intentional. I mean, that happened organically, but that was one of those things that was bottom up and top down,
Mm-hmm.
because George Bush was on record saying, "You're either with us or you're against us," right?
Right.
And supporting the troops was like, you got to support the troops, because if you're not, you're against us. So now you can't. There was no gray, there was no like, hey man, but the troops are going to Afghanistan, and none of the people at 9/11 were from Afghanistan. Hey, whoa, are you against us? Are you against us? But you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it was just,
Yeah.
yeah. And I saw something similar to that in the past. 1991, I believe, 91 or 92. Okay, so a decade prior. As I said, I've been going to Indiana almost every year, or my cousin will come to Montreal.
Mm-hmm.
It was the bombing, it was the attack of Kuwait by Iraq, and then the US went in. And I saw my buddy, my cousin, his name is Zakwan, they call him Zaki or Zach.
Mm-hmm.
So Zach is as brown as me, much browner in fact, with all white friends. And I remember his friends just being like, Zach, there are Americans in Kuwait. We had to go in there, man. And Zaki, more of a global sort of individual, global perspective, been to Pakistan many times, traveled with his family.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, this is actually bullshit. They are a sovereign nation, and we shouldn't be doing this to Iraq. This is not how this should be handled.
Mm-hmm.
No, man, these are American lives, dude. And then that all just over the years faded, and then people either accepted or didn't accept that the only reason that happened was to go and take over oil fields and oil territory and that kind of stuff. But I remember his friends so passionately defending America's right to go attack Iraqis.
Yeah.
And they all had different reasons for it, but it was like America's interests first above all else.
It's crazy. Yeah. And so that's why I was thinking, like, it was hard enough for me just being like not a fan of George Bush at that time. You know what I mean? Like I thought Al Gore would have been a better president. But the second that happened, I felt like if I even criticized Bush, who was
Sure.
an idiot, you know.
Well, he was more than an idiot, Sean, right? I mean,
Yeah.
he is a man who has blood on his hands. I believe I liken him to our past mayor, Rob Ford, in a way, like a guy with good intentions and a good heart at some level,
Yeah.
but also guilty of a lot of shit. And some of it is because he just didn't know any better. He probably felt certain things were in line with his Christian values or whatever. But when Ellen sits with George at a game,
Yeah.
and goes, well, you can't even have friends. The guy, he's responsible for the murder of so many people, and they're brown and beige people, so it doesn't matter. And now Ellen posted yesterday about that horrific attack on that jogger, that murder, that racist murder of that jogger, Ahmad Aubrey, I think his name is. Who's his name? But it's like, Ellen, that's horrible because you have black friends and you look at that and like, that's terrible. But if you had a few Muslim friends, you might realize that George Bush was also at the helm of something truly, truly horrific.
Like it goes against everything that she has presented herself as, for sure. Because that's the thing too. I don't know. There's a lot of dictators out there, and I'm sure Saddam Hussein was bad, and say what you want about him, but the trains ran on time before the war. You know what I mean?
Look, my family comes from Pakistan. Like, there are thousands of examples that you can give about how much better the country runs when it's under a dictatorship.
Right.
And you break that up, and all of a sudden, it's kleptocracies. This is the word for these countries where these families just funnel money out to London and to Dubai and just rob their own people blind, at the very least. And it's a big deal. But I'm saying, at the very least, the dictators weren't doing that to that extent. If they were, it wasn't. So there's a guy. So there was a guy named Prime Minister Bhutto. My dad was a big fan of Ali Bhutto in the 70s, the People's Party of Pakistan. Then his daughter, Benazir Bhutto, was prime minister many decades later. And people, act like it's such an incredible thing for women, because in a country, Islamic Republic of Pakistan, there's a female leader. She was an asshole. She was not all women is good for women, is good for human beings. She was not good for human beings.
Yeah.
And then her husband, she was murdered. Her husband, runs the country in part at this point, and he's known as the 10% man. That's his nickname, because every deal that happens in Pakistan, he gets a 10% cut, and that's his name. And that's just because he was married into this Bhutto family. And this is like it's the whole kleptocracy thing and this bullshit democracy. Some countries aren't ready for it. I don't know what to tell you, buddy. Some countries aren't ready for it. And I can't speak knowledgeably about others, but I can speak about Pakistan. And I get it. There are countries that, like you say, the trains run on time. People know how to line up. People know what order is.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You want to talk about liberating the people of Iraq. The quality of life in Iraq, I mean, I wouldn't even call it a quality of life anymore. But, before it was a functioning, like Iran right now.
Sure.
We're talking about liberating the people of Iran. We know what a war with Iran looks like, because all we got to do is look at Iraq and Afghanistan. And anyway, I hope it never gets there. I hope we have enough to focus on now.
Yeah.
That maybe oil and those kinds of things won't be driving the boat. But
I feel hopeful for Iran, because Persians have made such strides in so many different industries. Scientists and politicians and business people, a lot of Persians have a lot of, whereas, go back to the 90s, who had really met an Iraqi in their life? They were like a faceless, and this is part of the point that I'm getting to. Ellen would have thought twice if she knew Muslims, if she knew Iraqis, if she knew people who had suffered under those years of war. War is such a weird word for what was happening, those attacks.
Yeah.
But when you don't know somebody and you fear somebody and you've been taught to, you've been programmed to believe that they are the enemy and they want this and they want only, they hate our freedom and this kind of stuff, then
Yeah.
it's easy to go and have a hot dog and a few laughs and chuckles with George Bush.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, but I think with Persians, I think it might be a little bit more difficult because there might be some, pushback locally to, Congress people and other politicians, and I'm hopeful that that's the case. And
yeah, and I think that they've built themselves a fairly strong country that it would not be. I mean, not that Iraq was easy, but it wouldn't be even as easy, quote unquote, as Iraq.
Yeah.
We were saying how September 11th, it's now, Islam is like on the defense now. Like the amount, I don't know how to say it, the amount of scrutiny that Muslims now have to deal with. It's weird how no other religions really have to do that. And I don't know what you think, but I think it kind of goes right back to September 11th.
I think that was, I mean, I think some people will pick up examples of films prior to September 11th. It was a very common trope to make a Middle Eastern person a bad guy and like an enemy, and that was a thing that was definitely in play. I don't think they had there wasn't the most positive outlook on people from the Middle East to begin with. Pakistan, they knew nothing about. We knew restaurateurs who were Pakistani, and they would call the restaurant an Indian restaurant.
Right.
My dad would be like, call it a Pakistani restaurant. People would be like, look, either people hear Pakistan and they think nothing, or they hear Pakistan, they think something negative. It's never in the positive. So I might as well call it an Indian restaurant. And, now at least we're in a time where, you can see a Yemeni restaurant, Somali cuisine, Pakistani, Bangladeshi restaurants, So there are those strides that we've made. But I think 9/11 was something huge, and it started something that has never fully stopped. Just last year, some guy was speaking to his mother on the plane in Arabic, and he was, Now we've also seen that. I've seen videos of that. Somebody was speaking Spanish. Some Mexican guy was speaking Spanish with his cousin or wife or whatever in the airport, and somebody was like, "Speak American." Is also
Sure.
It's all bad. It's all xenophobia and that kind of stuff. But the Arabic especially, it's like. So I think somebody was reading Arabic. They were reading a script in their native language. It's like the fact that upsets Americans, and there's enough people to get behind those people who have been upset is, man, what a con job. What an incredible con job this has been,
And it's crazy. It feels like there's a pressure for you guys to explain your faith, which you shouldn't have to do.
No. And there's a lot of people who are like, I'm done explaining this. I'm done answering questions that nobody else has to answer. Ilhan Omar from Minnesota, she's notorious for this now. She goes, how many times do I have to explain that I'm not a supporter of terrorism? How many times do I have to do that? Yeah. Nobody else has to answer these questions. Nobody, it's the same thing. Women go through this too. Why am I answering questions about my gender when you don't ask men these questions? It doesn't make any sense. And so, Muslims, and a Muslim woman has it probably the worst. Black Muslim woman. I mean, Ilhan Omar is a badass, like a real champ, man. I don't know. I mean, all these women in politics, really. Yeah. It's constant hate and misogyny and attacks that we have just no idea about. And, I really feel like, I don't know if it's Fallon. It's some late night host who does the mean celebrity tweets or something like that.
Oh, I think it's Kimmel. Yeah.
Kimmel they read the tweets, read the mean tweets. But I think every week we should get exposure to tweets and letters that these female politicians or female women in charge of anything in general get the privilege of reading every week. It's horrific.
It is. Yeah. Especially these days too, it's at like a fever pitch. And I was thinking what's happening, in 2001, it seems to be kind of happening to Chinese Americans, I'm sure,
Sure.
And it's interesting how it's almost, you can see it one for one. It's like almost the exact same thing happening again.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why when Trump is like, look, the virus came from China. It's a Chinese virus. I'm just calling it the Chinese virus. And he's acting like he's, sort of innocently calling it the thing that it actually is. There is a danger in that too. And I have friends who are like, well, to be honest, it is the Chinese virus. And those friends are sometimes they're Muslim, sometimes they're Indian Hindus. And I'm like, you just think about this. You think about if every time you did something, it was like, oh yeah, it's a Hindu this Hindu group. Why does it have to be a Hindu group? You're just a group of human beings. Why does it always have to be naming your religion or your background or your culture? There's a that is done very much intentionally, and Trump knows exactly what he's doing there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I find reframing something in somebody's mind so that they understand it in a way, that what if this happened to them?
Yeah.
Is one of the most powerful tools. And we do it in our house all the time. When my daughter says to my son, "You're not even listening to me. You're such a hypocrite." I'm like, well, look, now he's doing what you do to your mom and I. And then just, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It takes the signals out. It's not really a win, but at least it cuts the drama. A friend of mine who was a mechanic and he worked with a gay guy, and this guy I know was more of a recent immigrant, came when he was maybe 17 or 18 from Pakistan, and he was like, "Man, I work with this gay dude. It's the fucking worst." I go, "What's bad about it? Are you getting molested on a daily basis?" He goes, "No, but the guy's always making comments." He's like, "Hey, how's it going?" Because everybody knows that I'm not comfortable with him. So then he's like having fun with me and walking. I'm like, "Why are you not comfortable? What's the big deal?" He goes, "Dude, he's gay. It's not, I don't know. It's not cool." Like that was this whole thing. I go, "Listen, man, if you have something against somebody who's gay just because they're gay, you don't have a leg to stand on when somebody goes, 'I don't like you because you're Muslim,' and that's it, and that's the end of the story, and you don't need any other explanation." I grew up believing Muslims ain't shit, they're assholes, they're evil, and that's the end of the story. What are you going to say when you feel the same way about another group?
Yeah.
Nah, man, but it's, it's kind of different. I'm like, fuck it. I can see the wheels turning like, oh man, it's kind of true, but it can't be true because I'm not that type of person, but you are that type of person.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like sometimes like that's a seed you planted, and hopefully a couple of years he'll be like, "Oh, exactly. I get it." Someone will be fucking racist to him or whatever, and he'll be like, "Oh, this is what I was doing to step up or whatever."
Yeah. It's all about planting seeds, man, and some of them may never. That tree may rot fruit and stay in the ground. Who knows? But anyway, it's better than a confrontation in my mind.
Yeah, and at least we're trying,
Yeah, but I find like if you get aggressive and you go, "This is why you're so stupid," blah blah. Somebody else just gets they're not listening at that point, right? Your back goes up. You're not listening. You're defending yourself, and this is more like, "Hey, man, you got to look at it this way. What if this, and then that's it. You can be done with it. You've at least tried, and yeah, like you said, we're trying. It's something.
Yeah, and I mean, we've definitely seen how the confrontation doesn't work. It creates the kind of tension that gets, bigots elected to president or whatever. You know what I mean?
I was just gonna say, it creates what we're living in right now.
Exactly. So hopefully we can, learn from it at least. And Well, Ali, I have taken up enough of your time, buddy.
My pleasure to talk to you, bud. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for talking.
I hope to see you out there someday soon on the stages, man. That's there's nothing quite replicating that. I do, as you were saying too, there's, you were alluding to the fact that the world is healing. The earth is literally healing, and there's still a fucking polar vortex in Toronto for some reason. We can't have it all. Can't have it all. Still very cold, but noise-wise, I live in a noisy place. That noise is down. Pollution-wise, I live in a fairly high traffic area, maybe one of the most high traffic areas of Toronto, of this country, and that traffic's down. And if I have to drive somewhere to see less people and see order in the grocery store, it's like, you know what? Some of this is good. Some of this is good.
Well, so we were talking about, even if it changes so that like one day a week, the normal office person can stay home and work from home, even just one day a week.
Sure.
That would relieve so much congestion in the city. God forbid.
And I think we're learning how much work can be done remotely. I think a lot of bosses were probably like, no, you got to come in. You got to come in because we're a team and everyone got to know that we're all working. I think we passed that time. That may have been true in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
I remember getting a lecture from a boss in 2000 saying, because I would work 8 hours, my shift was 8 hours, but I would come in around 10, work till 6.
Right.
And I remember my boss telling me, look, nobody sees you at 6. They're all gone between 4 and 5 because they've come here between 8 and 9. And that little thing of you not being here for the first hour or 2 hours of work, that makes you less part of the team.
Wow.
And I honestly felt he had a point. I was like, it's true. I drink heavily and I can't wake up was what I was really thinking. I didn't say it to him.
Yeah.
But I don't think we have that anymore. I don't think we have that. Yeah. If I can log on and be there like, hi guys, I'm here. And I'm visually I'm here, emails I'm here, then I'm part of the team. Yeah. Nice talking to you, Sean.
Thank you, good talking to you too, Ali. And hopefully we'll see you in person soon.
See you, bud.
Okay. Thank you for tuning into the Rhino's Horn. If you want to follow us on social media, we are Rhino's Horn on Instagram, Rhino's Horn on YouTube. On Facebook, we are Ronnie Rhino, and on Twitter, we are Horny Voter. Please join us next week. My guest will be Canadian comedian Sandra Battolini. Sandra is not only very funny, but she is also in charge of the Canadian Association of Stand-Up Comedians. We'll be talking about that and much, much more. So thank you again for tuning in, and we will see you next week.